Laurie Huston's News for the Heart is dedicated to helping you give a voice to your own soul. Our hearts have the power to free us from pain and the struggles that keep us from awakening to our true essence. Join Laurie now as we delve into our heart and soul to find the path that will open us to the possibilities and lead us to the life we love to live.
And good afternoon. This is News for the Heart. Well, we have a special guest that hasn't been on the show for a little while, which is Jean Adrienne. And I'm so excited to have you on because you've actually started a whole new project, which I'm getting close to doing myself. And I'm excited to hear about everything that you're doing. But the one email that sort of caught my attention was the one about the fairy tales, and that we're talking about relationships. I mean, it's a big one. So I think it will be a lot of fun to explore and talk about, and we'll do a little bit of maybe some reading around, what sort of blocks us off from creating what we are wanting or co-creating or bringing into our life what we're wanting. And I'm kind of excited about having you back on the show, Jean. So let's play.
Let's do it, because I have missed playing with you.
Yeah. All right. So tell me about your new business.
So, I'm really just focusing on me and my business and who I am. And I've got this huge non-English speaking audience.
You do?
I mean, huge. And what I'm really focusing on now is bringing my message to the English-speaking people too. I don't want to neglect everybody else, but I want to share my work with people who speak English as well.
Yes, but we're no longer you are obviously still doing your inner speak stuff, but now this one's a little bit different. So tell us about that.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, inner speak is always going to be the basis of everything I do, because it is my life mission. I mean, it's why I'm here, and so now really what I'm doing is just getting kind of clearer on me, myself, and I, my relationship with myself and my relationship with everyone else, and my relationship with a potential beloved partner.
Okay. So you are doing weekly meetups with people to help them?
Not so much.
Okay.
But I'm getting ready to start a weekly program that will start in November, the first Tuesday of November, where I'm going to be using my DNA cards, these guys, and going through activating 142 latent strands of DNA, which basically relate to our gifts and abilities, going back and each of us claiming our gifts and abilities.
Nice.
And so it's going to be 10 weeks of meeting once a week to do that. And because right now, I mean, it's really, really important, I think, for each of us to figure out who we really are. Not what are we supposed to be doing, but who are we supposed to be being? Because we're human beings, not human doings.
Right. And
we got derailed from that, and we think we have to just like work, do, and fix, and no, we got to honor ourselves.
Yeah.
That's hard.
It is because we've gotten in a pattern of wanting to change and fix and heal, and and that could go on for centuries because
it has.
Exactly. And we got to stop and say, you know what? Just accept who we are right now, because until we can accept that, we can't even see what it is that we need to really shift and fix.
Right.
But we don't need to fix anything because we're already perfect.
Exactly.
We're there. We're just needing to be and more conscious. And then we can, but the energies have been so crazy. We sort of mentioned this while we were talking before the show.
You think?
The energies have been like really, really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people aren't knowing what to do. I mean, you guys in the States have been having quite the show. And we can't even always get that information because our government has decided that, it blocks all of everything. So we now have our own media intervention, which I don't know, not really pleased about, but that's what we put into power.
I'm not even aware of that. You and I'll have to talk offline about that one.
Oh yeah, no, we get it all the time. We go onto Facebook and there are people that put out articles and talk about stuff. We can't see them. It says due to Canadian policy, you can't. Now I know we are
Whoa.
strictly monitored. And the last piece of legislation that they've been talking about, I don't really like to get into politics, but it's to completely take away all of our power if we were to have another pandemic. They're putting WHO in charge, and they're also going to give the police permission to put us down, hold us down while they give us any vaccine that they decide we need to have. So we're really kind of getting, I don't think WHO will be around long enough for that to be established, but all the truths will be coming out because that is definitely what's happening over the next little while, especially once Pluto goes into Aquarius for good,
Mhm.
whatever.
Well, and I think a lot of the craziness right now has to do with this eclipse cycle. And from what I can see in that, it's really pushing all of us to look very closely at relationships with self, with others, with spirit, all of that, and find the things that are outdated and chuck them. Kick
Yeah.
them to the curb,
That's one way of doing it. Yes, we do have to look at, because that is the one area that we grow from the most anyway. That's how we grow.
Totally.
There is nothing that will push our buttons more than ourselves,
Yeah.
our
And I
parents.
think in the past, we've been able to sort of pussyfoot around that, and go, well, maybe I just won't talk to that person for a while or whatever. But, we're being, I think, really pushed now to
Yeah.
and draw hard lines for our own preservation, because I just think the universe isn't going to tolerate us being lukewarm anymore.
Right. And I think it's pushing us to really decide what's important, because I think we can get lost in politics. We can get lost in all of the stuff that's going on, especially the financial markets, everything.
Yeah.
We can get lost. The biggest thing is, what's here? What's in our hearts? What is it that who do we want to be? Who do we want to be?
And it's a choice.
Always.
You can choose peace or you can choose drama. My mother, well, God rest her soul, one of her favorite things was to just get in my face and go, Jeannie, you can either be happy or you can be right. What do you want?
That was very smart.
It was. She was way wiser than I wanted to give her credit for 30 years ago, 50 years ago, right. 60 years ago, whatever.
Yeah. Time, age, whatever. Yeah, no, that's the one thing I like to say to my clients all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to be happy or right?
Yeah.
But let's go back to the fantasies and the fairy tales and how to go through that because I can give you a great example, my own example. I'm in a relationship, although sometimes I wonder. And we both have divine contracts with each other, which is daunting, I think is the right word, because, when it's a karmic relationship, it's to help ourselves, where it helps us grow and evolve personally. When it's a soul relationship, it helps grow our soul group. When it's a divine relationship, it's bigger. So as much as we say, oh, that's what we want, and be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly.
When it's good, it's really good. And the energy that goes out and the love that goes out is just, people feel it, everybody knows. But when it's bad, or not bad, but challenging, and it's been challenging because, and it not even till quite recently. I mean, I've seen things, I've definitely grown a lot over the last 3 years. But one of the big things that I learned just recently is that I had a fantasy. I didn't think I did. I thought I thought that was done. But I did. I still had a fantasy of what I thought a relationship should be. So the expectation of, having phone calls regularly, seeing them regularly, getting together regularly, seeing people on holidays, that kind of stuff I had. And it was really getting to me because I probably saw him a handful of times over the entire summer.
Yeah.
And we lived like a 20-minute walk. And to me, it was like, why aren't I enough? But that's not what it ever was. And it was never about trust. It just, I had this fantasy, and part of me says, okay, but when do I get what I want? But then I know that that's the ego kind of going, okay. And I thank my ego every time when something is brought up, that I can say, thank you for protecting me. Thank you for trying to show me what I think is right. And I go through this quite frequently. This last one was literally just last week. And to the last bit of it, and I went, wow, like I had no idea I was still holding on to that fantasy. But because to me, it wasn't a fantasy, it was it just felt like it was a normal part of a relationship. But it wasn't. It was a fantasy of what I was creating. So it's really interesting because I'm no longer a late nighter. Why would I care if we didn't do evenings? Right? I go to bed early. Right? So, it was all these little things that were adding up. And I realized the fantasy that I had, that the ego wanted to show me, so that I could finally see that last little piece. I gotten rid of the abandonment stuff, but this last little piece, that last little fantasy that I was holding on to, it's like, wow, thank you. Because I felt really honored to finally see it as the fantasy that my ego was, and myself, not realizing it was a fantasy. So I was very honored and humbled that I finally got that piece.
Yay.
Yay.
For you.
And I think that that's the problem with a lot of people. In fact, that's what my new business is going to be. It's going to be helping men see their egos, because men's part of their DNA, and we can fight it all we want, but men are about, they're the protectors, they're the ones that go out to work, they're the ones that focus on work, and they put so much focus on work that they kind of let their relationships slide. And that's what I want to help men get back into the saddle and say, you know what, work is fine, but at this point in your life, you don't need to work so hard at being successful. Now you need to find a way to be successful in your relationships. So whether it's a divorce, a new marriage, or continuing just to find that spark back. So that's kind of what I'm wanting to start, which I know is going to be great.
Oh, I know it will. I know it will.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've all, well, I can only speak for myself. I started to say we've all, but no, I've lived in this fantasy world all my life. I mean, I spent the first 50 years of my life completely disassociated because it was safer that way, you know. And then as I began to realize that that's what I was doing and started learning to be in my body and do what I came here to do and be who I came here to be, that shifted. But it's this whole beloved partner thing, relationship, that keeps pulling me kind of sideways. And so I did a lot of work. I mean, I literally quit dating and started working on myself. And that culminated in writing the last book I wrote, Conjunctio, about the alchemical marriage. And that was all fine and good. And I thought I got it sorted out. But here I am 3 years later, and I still have no relationship in the physical plane. I I feel that energy signature. It's kind of like I'm chasing it,
Mm.
but have I met it? No, no, I haven't. And I mean, I've had a couple of really humdingers of fantasy things happen to me in the last 6 months.
Mm.
I mean, I went to Turkey and I had the most amazing mystical experience with Rumi in Konya. And he told me he'd been looking for me this entire lifetime, but he didn't know my energy signature. And that's why I had to go there so he could see it.
Nice.
And he gave me a poem.
Mm.
It just blew my heart wide open, you know? And I just knew I'd come back to the States and meet the guy that was the embodiment of Rumi in this lifetime. It hasn't happened. I haven't met anybody, no males. I mean, it's almost like I live in a desert of yang energy. I can find all kinds of women friends and meet all manner of women, but so then I started this trip to Scotland, and I was sitting in my living room thinking, surely he's going to be a guy in kilts, I'm gonna meet this guy in kilts, and that's going to be the be all and the end all. And then I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? I could live in Scotland. I
Mm.
could keep my house in Tallahassee and live here during the Scottish winter, and I could live there during the Tallahassee summer and hurricanes and all that, and it would be all good, you know? And darn if I didn't sit next to a woman on the plane going over there, living my dream.
Ah,
This woman met this guy that she had met like 50 years before, and they reconnected. His wife passed away, and now she lives 6 months of the year in Scotland and 6 months of the year in Punta Gorda, Florida,
mm.
in this amazing relationship with this great guy. And I thought, thank you, universe, you're showing me signs. But I didn't meet anybody, And so I after a week of that, by the time I got to London, I was in my cups. I felt like such a failure. It's like, wait a minute, why have I done all this work? You know, what's up with this? And don't I, all my I don't deserve it stuff,
Mm.
was just like rising up to the surface and just jerking me off my path,
Right.
almost like a lasso around my neck. It was that brutal.
Do you think that's why it happened, though? So that you could get rid of those last little
Of
pieces?
course.
Right.
Of course, and so did a bunch of clearings around that. Now I'm back centered and focused and, moving forward and just waiting to see what happens next because it's a freaking process. That's all it is.
Yes.
We're here caught up in this process of becoming more, whatever that means.
Or we're caught in the process of letting go of everything and just being in our hearts
Yeah.
so that we can authentically be ourselves and allow the authenticity of others to shine through as well.
I think that's what I mean by being more, being
Okay.
more authentic.
Okay.
Yeah. Not being bigger, wiser,
Right.
smarter, more powerful, richer, none of that.
Right. When I think more, it's like you're looking for something. When you say more, we're on the same path. We're just
Yeah, yeah,
definitely,
exactly.
yes.
Yeah.
And that's a big That's a big communication thing that people have. We have to accept both types of communication because everybody has such a unique, different path that we don't know exactly what they mean when they say something. And that's the clarity that we have to have when we have communication that's authentic, because we go through this with everybody. It's
Oh, totally.
it's fascinating
I
how
think that's part of the reason why the universe has led me to have this huge audience in Turkey,
mm,
because we don't speak the same language and we very rarely actually understand what the other person is saying.
except from the heart and what you teach.
Yeah.
Right. And my question to you is, you have this huge following. Why isn't there someone there? Have you not allowed that to open up, or were you holding on to him being English speaking? I don't know.
I've looked around over there too. I've been trying, I mean, absolutely, Rumi is over there.
Right.
And he told me that he's my beloved partner.
Okay.
We've been together life after life. Sometimes I'm the teacher, sometimes he's the teacher. He told me I'm the reincarnation of Shem's,
Nice.
and it feels right. It felt right. So yeah, I mean, I have found him
When was
there.
that in your journey
I'm
there?
sorry?
When was that encounter in your journey? Was
That
it
was like in May of this year.
near the end of your trip though?
Right in the middle.
Really?
Yeah,
Hmm.
right in the
Well,
middle.
my feeling is that he's actually really close. And I think that the signature of Rumi, that you just have to hold that energy. He's not obviously going to be exactly the same as Rumi,
Yeah.
as well. That was one incarnation, and now he's going to be different. But at the same time, that energy is really so. My suggestion is to just every night just play with that Rumi energy and focus on the energies of that poem and just say, okay, whenever you're ready, I'm here waiting.
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. Because
Because I don't think he's as far away as you think he is. And I think part of your Scottish trip was about realizing that you still had some issues around wanting it to look a certain way, maybe, and then your own, why am I doing this? What's going on? Why is it not working? That I think that's a great thing that our ego does.
I know. You
Right?
gotta love it, right?
It's like, bring us all the little things that are stopping us from being exactly where we want to be,
Yeah.
choices that we make, and how we allow those little voices from the past to really derail something that we know is no longer serving us and is no longer really part of our energy yet. There it is, right in front of us. It's like, oh, thank you for showing up again. What do you need?
Yeah.
And I think that's a good question to ask every time that little voice comes up. It's like, thank you. What do you need? What do you need to feel loved,
Hmm.
to feel valued? Because that part of us that feels that we've wasted and done all this work, and that part of it, that's not the inner child. That's the adult that has been working so hard for so many years and so many lifetimes and so many,
Yeah.
right? And we just
Oh,
have to
totally.
go, okay, thank you for showing up again. How can I love you so that you can tell me what it is that you need?
Yeah.
And I think it's more about the love within us than it is about what shows up necessarily on the outside.
Right.
It's like, okay, never in my life as a 5'2" height, would I imagine my divine mate to be 6'6"? Right?
Whoa, I didn't know that.
So that was like, whoa, that would never have come into, that would never have been something that I would even have looked for. And in fact, I remember asking someone, because I was like, do I trust this person? Do I open up my heart? My heart says something, but I'm like, this is so out of my area. I mean, I've always liked tall men, always. There's something about, someone who's 6 feet that, I just feel safe. 6'6", a little bit more than. But it's like we have this image, or we have what we believe, this fantasy. And that's the thing that keeps bringing us down, maybe, because how can anything, when we think of media, the media is wonderful at showing the cute meets, right? The falling in love, all the way to maybe even the engagement or that first kiss, shows absolutely nothing or very, very little of what happens in a relationship when you're actually in one.
Right. That's where it's messy.
Go ahead.
That's where it's messy.
Right? It's messy and it's real. And they don't want to show that because they want to keep us in the fantasy, which keeps us relatively unhappy. Right? Unless we can stay in that fantasy and feel amazing, which I've yet to meet somebody, unless they're kind of a Pollyanna person. But but yeah, it's like, how do we feel good about where we are without having to worry about the other person? Because that's, I think, what we do, is that we're always looking, searching, seeking, changing. But maybe we're just supposed to accept and be, not even try to do, just be.
Totally, because the other person's not our job.
Right.
And I think we've been raised lifetime over lifetime to think that we're supposed to give our all for the other person. I mean, even on the airplane, they tell you put the freaking oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on the person next to you. But we don't hear that message.
Right. And
I mean,
that's it. That's really, that's it, right? And not to the point where we're narcissistic, because that's a whole different ball game. But unfortunately, that's where a lot of people go when they think of self-love. It's like, oh, you're one of those, right? But that's taking self-love to, well, a whole different place. And that's really self-love. That's just fear in a different package.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's about just being you and allowing those people. Because when I went for a walk that day on the boardwalk, I didn't expect to meet anybody. I mean, I do. I met lots of people, and that's the great thing about walking that I enjoyed so much and still do, is that there are certain people who are out the same time all the time, so you get to meet people and enjoy people. And I'd kind of been, well, it was COVID, so we were all kind of weary about going outside and stuff. But again, it wasn't my intention when I was going out to meet somebody. It wasn't even my intention when I met him that it was somebody, that it was going to be somebody.
Yeah.
Other than the second time I met him, he reminded me so much of the last relationship that I was in, that I thought was really an important relationship. And so much to the point where I went, my heart kind of stuttered, because I thought it was Scott. And I went, and then I went, wait, that's not Scott.
Oh, right.
That I was leaving after we kind of joked about something, and I was leaving. I went, oh dear. I think this is going to be important. And it has been. Easy? No. Important? Yes.
Well, I think that a lot of times the the things that are the most important aren't the easy ones.
Right.
Because you don't, it's kind of like, I had a discussion with somebody recently about cesarean section babies.
Ah, okay.
And the fact that, the baby's supposed to come out the womb and the vagina and get squeezed. And babies that don't get that end up having problems with fluid in their lungs
Uh-huh. Oh,
because it doesn't get squeezed out like it was supposed to.
that's
And that's how come a lot of C-section babies are spending time in the NICU now, because they have lung issues. But also, I've just sort of like been doing my own little personal study of C-section children, adults later, who also, because they didn't have to fight their way out of the womb, they expect life to be handed to them on a silver platter.
oh, interesting.
And I'm like, I'm observing this. I mean, there's nothing scientific about my observations at all. But I'm just like, isn't that interesting? And oh, you were you were a C-section baby? Okay. That
Yeah.
explains a lot to me.
That's really, really interesting because
Yeah.
we have to work so hard to be born.
Hmm.
And maybe we think that life needs to be more difficult than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Although these days, I don't think it really is about that anymore. I used to think that. I know that we need challenges to grow, but I don't even think that's what it's about. I think it's really about us seeing that it's not so much what happens because there are so many things happening. And some of them are beautiful and wonderful and great. And well, we've seen all the ones that aren't.
Sure. And even with the higher percentage of cesarean section births these days, maybe that's the universe showing us it doesn't have to be so difficult.
Maybe.
And maybe there are other ways to get that fluid out of the lung. Maybe they need to do something to these babies when they come out and just massage them.
Mm,
Who knows?
right. And that's probably a really good point. 'Cause they probably don't focus on all of that so much because they're not really thinking about it. But I do believe that the doctors are pushing cesareans for, well, for greed purposes, right?
Yeah,
So,
totally, totally. But it's kind of like the fairy tales. When
right.
we go back to where we started, we grew up reading fairy tales, and how many of us love to read stories, especially the ones that had the happy endings, and so we fall into this um, web. I'm not going to call it a trap. It's a web
You do.
of wanting everything to turn out okay and having, maybe there's some hiccups along the way, but in the end, the prince kisses Sleeping Beauty and she wakes up. Or the prince chases Cinderella down and the shoe fits. Or the prince that was a beast has somebody, Belle, put enough faith in him that he's able to shed his beast, appearance and become who he was really meant to be. So
I kind of like that one better than the other two, but
yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's
But
us
they're
learning to
all
love.
they're all fairy tales unless they're not, unless they're really there to show us possibilities.
Right. Right. But the Cinderella and the Sleeping Beauty, yeah. Beast, I kind of like Beauty and the Beast because
Yeah.
it's more symbolic of us not having to judge that because we
Hmm.
judge way too much. We
Exactly.
make judgment calls on looks, on personality, on all of that stuff. And can we accept? Can we just accept them for who they are?
Totally.
The thing is
And
that there's so many people that try to force a relationship because they're afraid, right? They're afraid they won't find something better. They're afraid that, that it won't be better. And they kind of give up their own joy, their own, because they're always so focused on the other person, turning the beast into a prince. And that maybe that's the biggest problem with Beauty and the Beast, is that it's about turning a beast into a prince. We're trying to change and fix. We try to believe that our love is going to be enough. So yeah, that's still.
But back up to Sleeping Beauty. I mean, that's an example of how the Sleeping Beauty girl let something from the outer world cause her to shut down.
Ah,
You know, you call her the jealous queen or the wicked witch or whatever she was, wanted what she thought Sleeping Beauty had, so poisoned her and put her to sleep. And how many of us have had that happen in our life? How many people in my life have shut me down, told me that my intuitive gifts weren't important, or they were wrong, or they were sinful, or all of that stuff, which is no different than, here, bite this apple.
yeah.
You know? So,
Yeah.
and maybe it takes somebody coming along to see me for who I really am, the prince kissing the Sleeping Beauty, to cause me to realize, oh yeah, you know. I mean, there's something like that in every one of these stories. They were put there for a reason.
Yes, they were.
You know. And I mean, even today, I get some of my best inspirations out of cheesy fiction books.
Yeah.
You know, I'll have these massive ahas after reading a silly little book
Right.
that, you know, that should just be a quick rom-com thing, you know, that I'm able to read to keep myself from being bored. And then there'll be something that just freaking gobsmacks me about
Right.
my own reality.
Yeah. And that's
The clues are there. We
all.
just have to see them, you know, and own them and listen, pay attention. I think that's why you have this show, is because you're helping people to find the signs that are in plain sight, hiding.
In plain sight hiding. Yes. It's interesting. Consciousness is it, I don't want to say it's a challenge. What makes it a challenge is how, I guess, how everybody has their own definitions of everything. Everybody already has made their most of their behaviors, and everything has already been set long before they were mature enough to even understand what they were saying and thinking.
Pretty much by the age of 5.
Right? Yeah,
You
I
know?
think 7, but yes. I mean,
Yeah.
at that point, you know, there's nothing mature about us, and yet we get caught up in those beliefs,
Mhm.
behaviors, and patterns that we established, thought they were right, because how can a parent that yells at you or hurts you be anything out but loving? That, to us, to that child, represents love. Or
Exactly.
the parent that, you know, gives them everything they want, and then they expect the same thing to happen when they're in a marriage.
Yeah.
And there's not many times where we're taught how to be independent and autonomous before the age of 7.
Right.
So, you know, we are almost completely dependent still. Well, we are dependent. How could we not be dependent at the age of 5 and 7? So we're dependent. We learn how to be dependent. We learn how to give our power away, and we learn how to be controlled and manipulated. And we think that's love. And we have to go, wait, maybe
Yeah.
not love. Maybe that's something else we just misunderstood.
And sometimes it takes us 50, 60, 70 or more years to figure that out.
I hear you.
Although I saw a reel on Facebook today that I mean, I can waste an inordinate amount of time looking at these reels, and it was things that I learned before I was 5 years old in Japan.
Okay.
And she says that the Japanese child learns by the time they're 5 that they're okay and safe to stay home alone. That they're okay to run errands outside the home alone. And they're okay to ride the bus or the train alone. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, just because it was on Facebook and a reel does not necessarily mean it's true. But I would love for somebody who was brought up in the Japanese culture to clarify that one for me, because I can't even imagine. I mean, your limbic brain isn't fully developed by that age. You don't have a way of really telling what's real and what's not real.
No,
And
I can't even imagine.
to go and take the subway? Uh-uh.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know.
I do believe we've kind of gone a little bit too far with our kids. We went when we were kids, come home before it gets dark. That's literally, that was it, right?
Hey, I grew up drinking out of the garden hose and I'm still alive. So there we go.
Right? We didn't have seat belts.
Uh-uh.
I remember, being in the back of a truck, the back of the, just sitting there. I mean, our parents, they didn't care about those things. We've kind of gone a little bit too far, but
Yeah.
I know my nephew is a father in Japan, and I know that that's not the case for his child, but is it because he's Canadian? I'm not sure.
Right?
So
Check it out and let me know, though. Ask him to find out.
I would love to. I mean, I have a friend who's also Japanese, but they lived in Canada. So again, that probably changes that one, but wow,
Yeah.
pretty interesting. I I can't imagine, but okay.
Exactly.
At 5, I mean, yeah, that might be pulling it a little bit too far. I mean, now we would just be afraid that they'd get kidnapped and stuff, but
Right. Exactly.
we kind of have taken a little to the dark side where we're really doing a disservice to these kids because they're going to grow up a little bit more fearful of everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm dealing right now with my 18-year-old granddaughter, actually 19-year-old granddaughter, and she's going to be going to Scotland to visit her sister, and her parents are fighting about whether or not that she should be able to fly alone
Of course.
nationally. I mean, for God's sake, she's 18.
Apparently
Should
not.
be able to handle this,
Yeah.
you know?
Yes. And that's what we're doing to our kids. We're making them afraid.
Yeah.
Or whether they're afraid or whether their parents are just, I mean, yeah. Yeah. We've kind of gone too far, but
Well, that pendulum swings. That's a good thing.
yes. And in some ways it affects our relationships too. So we have to see what that's because how is somebody whose parents telling them that it's not safe to travel going to possibly meet a person who's going to feel that they're going to feel safe with?
Right.
If everything is unsafe, how do you build up trust and feel safe?
Yeah.
It's interesting to see what happens in the next.
Exactly.
But maybe that's the sad part of social media is that everybody's becoming more social media savvy, don't really have friends in person. They have them all online, right? I know a girl, that's the only way she meets people.
Yeah.
Any people.
I mean, look at you and I. We knew each other for how long? We'd never met. And then one day, boom, we decided to go on a 7-day cruise. And it worked out okay.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But that's different because we sort of built it over time and we've known each other a long time. But I mean, she won't do anything. Like she won't meet a guy. She won't meet a guy until she's like talked to him for like a couple years online first. And it's like, and then she gets upset and disappointed. It's like, well, but you don't really have a real relationship yet. Like that's an online thing is not a relationship. I mean, it is, but it's not.
Right, exactly.
Right. And the thing is that when it's an online thing, and this is where fantasy comes in, it's like The fantasy is they're meeting all of your needs because it's just you that's having the relationship. You're not actually connecting in any way. You're actually still just being in your fantasy of what the relationship could be.
Well, here's what's crazy. You know, now there's an AI that you can hook up in a relationship with, and you can call them up and they'll talk with you. And it's not even a real person.
It's not a person. And from what I hear, it's gotten very dark.
I don't know, because I tuned out of that one as soon as I heard about it. It's like, whoa, that's just kind of different.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do we go there? You know?
Right.
I
Yeah.
want one that's flesh and blood,
Right? Yeah.
you know,
I don't
that I can touch.
kind of important.
Yeah.
Kind of important. I mean, you can still grow. You could still
Mhm.
grow, but yeah, I'm off for the physical.
Right, yeah, exactly. Because you can't run that through Chat GPT and expect to get much out of it.
It might make you feel a little better for a little bit of time, but
Exactly.
yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So what's that answer, Lori?
The answer, I think, is looking at the fantasy. I think if everybody sort of said, okay, what am I actually looking for? And put the fantasy in writing and look at it and go, okay, is this real? Like, can somebody be this person, or am I trying to make this person? Like, am I allowing this person to just come to me, or am I trying to force it to come to me? And I think when we have expectations, which we all do, it's kind of hard not to. But it's acknowledging that, hey, thank you for showing up, because I know now that that's something I need to work on myself. So look at the fantasy that you're trying to create. Because I think we try to establish certain parameters. And then there's a lot that The Secret kind of did for us and I'm not sure that it was all positive, because it was really about the co-creation, but from a perspective, I don't want to say greed, but I'm going to say that the people that made the most money off The Secret were the people that were teaching the secrets, not
Good
the
point.
people that were actually doing or being the secrets.
Yeah.
And I think that we get so caught up in manifestation and creation or attraction that we stop looking at ourselves and are trying to create something outside ourselves that we can bring to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's how it works. I think
No.
you have to be in alignment and also just be aware. And when we meet somebody, like, don't try and make them fit into something. Just allow them to be.
Yeah.
And then see what happens. And if it doesn't fit, then it doesn't fit, and that's perfect. Like, I know that at some point I may find that my divine mate doesn't fit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that I won't meet him in my next life or the next life or whatever. It just means that this life right now, it's just not working for me. And
Or
that's
that you've
okay.
learned all the lessons you were supposed to learn. You know, maybe that's a piece of it as well. You know, I mean, in going back, especially when I wrote that book, Conjunctio, and I went back and looked at all the relationships that I've had, starting with my dad and moving all the way through all of my years, I found that I did benefit from every single one of them. No matter how testy and hard it was, something good did come out of each and every one of them.
Oh,
And I was a better person after that. Maybe because of the hard lesson I learned, but be that as it may, I did grow in a good way.
and I think that as long as we're growing, then we're fulfilling the purpose to the universe.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's more important than anything. I think we're so caught up in the fantasy of what love is supposed to be that we're not allowing it to be anything else.
Right.
We're trying to make it fit into that
Uh-huh.
whatever container we've created. That,
Exactly.
right? But
Mhm.
as long as we learn, and that's the thing, is that sometimes relationships aren't meant to be forever relationships. They're just meant for us to learn something incredibly important that will allow us to be in the next one. Or maybe that's not what we need. Maybe we keep trying to do something that we don't need. Now, in your case, I know someone's coming because I can feel him as well. So I'm not worried about that. You might want it to come quicker and whatever. Well, timing, as we both already know when we have to do it for our clients, timing is in the universe's hands. It's not
Right. And
mine.
it is whatever, and the mistake that I've made throughout my personal history this lifetime has been to try to fit the square peg into the round hole, make that relationship match my fantasy,
Right.
whatever. And that never works.
It really doesn't.
No, because you force that square peg into the round hole, you've taken the edges off, and it will fall through, or it will never get in there to begin with, you know?
I think if I were to go back to the very first teachings of Matt Kahn, which is whatever arises, love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of it, right? It doesn't
Yeah,
really
totally.
matter whether again, this fantasy that we hold where we have certain expectations of what love's supposed to look like. And it doesn't matter. Just love it. Just love
Mhm.
all of it. Because even if it's not the right one, then that means that the right one's still coming because you're still acknowledging it. You're still accepting it for what it is, and you're still growing from it. And that's all that we're ever meant to do. But I do believe we're meant to be doing it together. I do
Totally,
believe
totally.
we've
And
got
it's
to
kind of
stop.
like AI, you know,
Ah.
because AI learns from the database, from each little request. So every time you make a request on the universe is learning a little bit more about you. And the next one's going to be a little bit closer and a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
And we just got to love them as they come.
Exactly. Just accept everything that's going on. Stop trying to
Mhm.
fix yourself. Stop trying to change you. Stop trying to change somebody else to fix what you've decided love is. I had a very interesting client once who was so adamant that it had to look like this. I said, "Well, what if it doesn't?" "Well, it has to."
Mhm.
"But what if it doesn't?" "Well, he's not the one then." I was like, maybe you're not the one.
Right?
Right? You're trying to create, I mean, she just wasn't getting it. It's
Yeah.
like, wow. You can't change somebody to see it. You just, when they're ready, they will see it.
Uh-huh.
And as much as you want to help them, I had somebody who was like, I want you to help me have more luck. More luck. I said, really? Yeah. Yeah. Because I went to school so that I could learn how to manipulate the stock markets. I'm like,
Oh no.
see,
And you call that luck? I don't think so.
it's like, I think you've missed the point.
Right. Because I mean, one of the big universal lessons is that how is not our job.
So hard
Yeah.
because so many people have been taught that we have to fix it,
Hmm.
right? It's up to us. We need to do it. We're not happy. We need to make sure we're happy. So
Yeah.
we'll fix everything outside of ourselves because, of course, that's what is making us unhappy.
Yeah.
Man,
Oh
this,
boy.
this journey that we're on has been a fascinating one, but it's so full of different twists and turns and sometimes really hard to know whether it's working or not. And then that's when you start doubting, and that's when you start going, oh no, I've done something wrong. And that's the thing, is that you haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah, because it's
Have
always working, whether we know it or not.
right. And that's it. So just embrace whatever it is and stop trying to make it something else.
I'm just so happy that I am on this journey with you
Aw.
because it makes it
Well,
just
you're
that much
wonderful.
better.
I always love that you're so open and willing to discuss your own personal challenges. And, you've gone through so many since I've met you. And I think, wow, like you have so much of my respect for all that you've
Aw,
gone through. It's like, I, yeah, I just love you so much because you've just been such an inspiration and so
thank you.
willing to
And
be.
I'm open to renegotiating that contract with the universe about not having to do it with hard lessons anymore. Totally open to that. Y'all hear me?
I think you've had your last one. Don't worry.
Let's
I
let's
think
see
you're
that be so. I'll drink to that.
good for you. But really, it's been a joy as always. I think I'm going to let you leave a message of whatever you want to leave, but I know that everything's coming your way. Maybe
Thank
not
you. Yeah,
exactly.
and my message to everybody else is just embrace your own truth, your light, because it's a unique light that nobody else has. And so why not shine it?
Yeah. Yeah. Shine that light. Beautiful. All right. Well, you've been listening to News of the Heart. We've been getting to the heart of what matters with Jean Adrienne and fantasies and relationships and life. Thank you, Jean.
Thank you, Laurie.